I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Frazier.
Present.
Ms. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Labutus.
Here.
Mr. Lang.
Here.
Mr. Murmy.
Present.
Mr. Rath.
Here.
Mr. Blake.
Here.
Mr. Bub.
Here.
Mr. Cost.
Here.
And Mr. Fennell.
Here. We have all here this evening. If you please stand for the invocation by Mr. Labutus, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, as we come to pray this evening, we thank you for this beautiful day that you have given us. As the weather takes a turn for spring and into summer, I just ask that you be with our city, and that as we have our discussions this evening, that we would keep your vision for this city in mind. I ask that you be with those in the city that are less fortunate, that we would be able to meet their needs as well. I ask you to be with us this evening. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
We're going to change the agenda just a second tonight. I'm going to move Mayor Hall up from communications. He has two proclamations this evening, one for Light Ohio Blue Week and one for Garrett Ford Day. So, Mayor.
Thank you.
You gentlemen want to center up on the podium for the mayor?
Stand right here.
This is Officer Ben Scholl, would be the taller of the two, and Brett Snelling. Good things.
They are here this evening representing one of our outstanding safety departments that is always doing a great job. United States Air Force and Navy here, if you can kind of see, I'm not doing a van of white here, but they're proudly wearing their veterans pins. That is a new addition to the uniform this year, and we're real honored to have that. I would like to share a proclamation. Whereas in honor of our men and women in uniform, downtown Newark has come together to light Ohio blue from May 8th through May 16th, 2019. And whereas every day, over 80 officers and civilians of the Newark Division of Police face the challenge of keeping Newark's neighborhoods safe with bravery and honor. And whereas members of the Newark Division of Police perform their duty under direction of these core values. We value human life and dignity. We value integrity as the basis for community trust. We value the fair and impartial enforcement of federal, state, and local laws and the right of the accused. We value professional excellence. We value all members of the division, both sworn and civilian. And whereas in the history of the city, Newark has offered the loss of three of its finest who will always be remembered for their dedication to this city. Officer Thomas Roach was taken from us on November 29, 1888. Officer Walter Boscawen was on July 10, 1915. And Officer Harry Beasley was taken from us on July 2nd, 1931. Officer Beasley was also a recipient of the U.S. Congressional Medal of Honor. Now therefore I, Jeff Hall, Mayor of the great city of Newark, do hereby proclaim May 8th through May 16th, 2019 as Light Ohio Blue Week in Newark, Ohio, and express gratitude to the men and women of the Newark Division of Police for their service to the city of Newark. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Coming? You take that with you. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. Thank you. Mayor? Yep. Mr. Cost wants to know if he'd like to buy a valve while we're waiting.
There's a gentleman sitting down there with a lot of gold medals that hang around his neck. Garrett, you join me up front here. He joined us, I believe it was maybe October last year, if I recall, something about then. with three other youth that had done some outstanding things. If you haven't read the paper, Garrett, we were recognizing him for his wins in Seattle. He had some very similar medals, and as you can see here, these say World Games. So he has taken a trip since then to Abu Dhabi in United Arab Emirates. He's represented Licking County in a phenomenal way and brought back gold medals again. So this is outstanding. So we're real happy that he's in here with us. Whereas Garrett Ford is being recognized for his talent, hard work, and dedication in the sport of powerlifting. Garrett, also known as the Hulk, Ford, has been causing quite a sensation in our community. After dominating the Ohio Special Olympics Summer Games, Garrett went to Seattle, Washington to compete in the 2018 Special Olympics USA Games. He not only competed, but he earned 3 gold medals in the men's powerlifting, sweeping his weight class. Garrett then traveled halfway around the world to Abu Dhabi to show off his skills at the Special Olympics World Summer Games. More than 7,500 athletes from over 190 countries competed. Garrett was one of 2 athletes from Ohio to compete this year and first ever athlete from Licking County. He brought home 4 gold medals. Along his path to greatness, Garrett has had the pleasure of meeting famous people such as Second Lady of the United States, Karen Pence, actor Arnold Schwarzenegger, and World Wrestling entertainer star Finn Balor. Garrett is leading the inclusion revolution by breaking barriers and setting the pace. He has wished nothing but success in his future endeavors. Now therefore I, Jeff Hall, Mayor of the great city of Newark, do hereby proclaim May 6, 2019 as Garrett Ford Day in Newark, Ohio, in recognition of this major accomplishment in his life. Garrett, congratulations. Congratulations again. The best thing to you. Thank you.
Congratulations, Garrett. That's a great accomplishment, I'll tell you. We'll just go ahead and finish communications. Next under communications, we have the Ohio EPA public notice for a national pollutant discharge elimination system permit that was issued. And our other communication was from Dave Warner, director of the Little Arrow Play Cafe, a letter regarding his concern about the 2-hour parking in downtown Newark. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Now we'll move back up to caucus. Caucus is a time when council will discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. We do have Rule 11. We have 4 resolutions for Rule 11. What Rule 11 is when some legislation did not meet the time limit. They were discussed in committee tonight, in Service Committee, but they didn't meet the limit to be on the agenda. So the majority and minority leader would have to agree to hear those tonight. That would be Mr. Marmee and Mr. Koss. Is that okay with both of you? Okay. And we're going to go ahead and talk about Resolution 19-37.
Okay. Resolution 19-37 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Koss, Mr. Lang, a resolution regarding a buffer zone for the annexation of approximately .419 acres, more or less, located in Newark Township and declaring an emergency.
For the reading of 19-37 is emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 19-37.
Motion by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-37?
Mr. President, I'd like to defer to our law directors to an explanation as to why the emergency clause is on this and the next 4.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Mr. Sapp?
Mr. President, all 4 of these pieces of legislation refer to an expedited annexation of a single parcel of property on Myrtle Avenue in Newark. Because it's an expedited to annexation, there are certain statutorily imposed deadlines which we must meet, and these pieces of legislation must be acted upon within 20 days of receipt. Today is that 20th day. We have no choice but to go forward with this today.
Thank you, Mr. Sassen. Is there any other discussion on 19-37?
I would have said it exactly like that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, well said, Mr. Rath. Anyone else? Anna, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bug?
Yes.
Mr. Koss?
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
19-37 passes 10-0. Next we have 19-38.
Resolution 19-38 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Koss, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Lang, A resolution adopting a statement indicating what services, if any, the City of Newark, Ohio will provide for approximately .419 acres, more or less, located in Newark Township, a territory proposed for expedited to annexation, and declaring an emergency.
You've heard the reading of 19-38. It is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Rath.
I make a motion to adopt 19-38.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-38?
Ditto.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
19-38 passes 10-0. 19-9 and 19-10, one is approving it, one is objecting to it, as you remember how these resolutions work on annexation. So basically, if we pass 19-9, then 19-10 would not be needed. 19-09.
Ordinance 19-09 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Koss, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Lang, an ordinance consenting to the annexation of certain territory generally described as being approximately .419 acres, more or less, located in Newark Township to the City of Newark, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
You've heard the reading of 19-09. It is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Rath.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 19-09.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-09?
Mr. President, just
Ms.
a
Rath.
question to the law director, a point of clarification. If we all vote yes on this, do we or do we not need to read 19-10 and pass that with a no vote?
It needs to be read, but it can die for lack of a motion.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
19-09 passes 10-0. And finally, we have 09-10.
19-
19-10. God.
by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Koss, and Mr. Lang, an ordinance objecting to the annexation of certain territory generally described as being .419 acres, more or less, located in Newark Township to the City of Newark, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
You've heard the reading of 19-10 is an emergency. What is your wish? 19-10 will die for lack of a motion. Thank you, Mr. Rath. Okay, next we move on to the minutes of our April 15th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those? Motion by Mr. Labutus.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have two reports of standing committees tonight, one from Finance and one from Ways and Means. Without objection, those will be received and filed. We have no reports from city officials this evening. We've already done communications. Next on the agenda is comments from citizens. There's two opportunities for comments from citizens. One is now and one is after the legislation. This is not a debate with council. This is just your opportunity to be heard. If anyone would like to speak this first time, please raise your hand so I can bring you up. And then, ma'am, you go first, and then you're next, ma'am. You just give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Linda Mossholder, and I reside at 224 Green Meadow Drive in Newark, Ohio. And what I would like to address tonight, there were several comments made at several council meetings. One, that there are plentiful services for the homeless, and another one was requesting that volunteer groups get together to address the needs. So I'd like to just clarify some information. First, I would like to read a post that was made to the Homeless Outreach on Facebook. Does anyone know where a homeless woman can go? She has been to the Coalition for Housing, and they basically told her there's 40 people on the list ahead of her. She just started a job, and I could help her with transportation. Can she stay at the Salvation Army, maybe? She is so lost and doesn't know what to do. Please help. Just for some information, the Salvation Army, which is restricted to people who are residents of Licking County, they do not serve people from outlying areas, has 24 beds for families, and they are usually at capacity, and they have 30 beds for individuals. The Haven is a men-only facility, and it has 26 beds. They are usually full. The Licking County Coalition for Housing applicants must meet the HUD requirements for homeless definition. Currently, as of April 14th, there is a waiting list. 40 families are on the waiting list, and they have a 2 to 3 month wait. Individuals, they have 77, which is a 3 to 6 month wait. Metro Housing provides a Shelter Plus care, and that is for people who have special needs. They have decreased their beds from 82 to 54. Behavioral Health Partners also has Shelter Plus housing. They're full, and they have very little turnover. Transitional housing, which is usually the next step after you leave a shelter. The Licking County Housing Coalition has decreased their beds or their shelter housing from 72 to 69. The Gardens on 6 has 24 units. However, they are currently not accepting new residents because they are undergoing changes in policy and entry requirements, including the length of stay. Currently, there are 12 units that are not occupied. Section 8 house vouchers, which are vouchers for the poor in our community. There are 5 new vouchers for people with disabilities. The remainder of the vouchers remain about the same. The waiting list, and they just recently purged it, there's 200 plus on the waiting list with a minimum of a 2-year wait. They have also reported that the number of landlords willing to accept housing vouchers has continued to decrease. There is a meeting, and we're now meeting monthly. It's called the Licking County Housing Initiative, and they oversee some of the HUD programs, and they also try to address homelessness issues. One of the things that the partners who provide assistance to people who are needing housing, and that includes the Housing Coalition, Behavioral Health Partners, Metro Housing, Salvation Army, and the veterans programs that assist the homeless. They are all reporting that one of their major problems is the lack of affordable, safe housing in the community. In order to go into rapid rehousing or some permanent housing, most of the people need to find a place to rent, and they're having much more difficulty finding a place to rent. And some groups do not qualify for housing under HUD regulations. They include people who are leaving sober housing or people who are leaving halfway houses. They are considered sheltered, so they are not defined as homeless. Another group that does not qualify for HUD housing, and in many cases not Metro housing, are people who are returning from incarceration. I currently work with the Licking County Coalition for Reentry and help citizens who are returning to Licking County, because that was the county from which they were committed, to find assistance so they could be successful citizens when they return. 95% of the people who fill out an application for assistance say housing is one of their primary needs. The first need is usually transportation, and another need is employment. Most of them do not have a problem finding employment. Another reason that there is a homeless issue or house, we like to refer to it at Newark as a housing issue, not necessarily a homeless issue, because homeless is they're mainly unsheltered, so evictions are one of the reasons for people who may end up homelessness. About 3 weeks ago, we met a couple who was recently evicted from their residence because their rent went up $200 a month. The male partner was working a minimum wage job and could not afford the extra $200 a month and received an eviction notice. When people are evicted, it causes incredible stress on the families. It prevents people from saving the small amount of money they may already have. An eviction on a person's record makes it very difficult for them to rent another apartment. And it also causes hardship on children because they often have to transfer schools. The other question that we were asked is, what are all of these volunteer groups doing to help coordinate? It seems like there was a lot, and some were going in different directions. We are meeting to discuss efforts to assist unsheltered people. Some of the efforts currently underway include John's Helping Hands, which is one woman, provides 180 meals each Sunday to people who are unsheltered in Newark. The churches are developing a database of churches willing to provide assistance to the unsheltered. In the near future, this will also have a crisis hotline, so someone could call this one line and they will be connected with the church to try and provide assistance. One of the issues that we're having right now with churches trying to provide assistance is the two, and granted they were not really good places to put people, the Nights Inn and the Budget Inn are no longer in existence. So the cost of putting somebody up in a motel has increased, which is putting a hardship on some of these volunteer organizations. The other thing is that the homeless outreach is still meeting on Saturdays. Churches throughout the community are providing meals. Vertical is providing meals, showers, and other assistance. We are also going to, as the volunteer groups are going to take surveys, trying to get information from the people we serve, including basically how long they have been homeless. We are not going to ask them where they reside because most of them will not tell us out of fear that that information will get out and they will be removed from those places. There are other efforts being made to address the housing situation in Newark. There is a task force, and some members of the city are a part of that. Some of the recommendations is to develop an RFP to address the housing situation. They're going to have to address the short-term needs and then the needs to create low-barrier housing. Low-barrier housing is basically housing that is designed to meet people who may still be in active drug use, and it would provide medical care and other types of situations. And then the third thing they will do is recommend ways to create additional affordable housing. So there are efforts being made by both volunteer and the agencies. But as you can see, we do not have enough either volunteer or social servant agencies to address the needs. Thank you.
Thank you. We will make sure to get those figures in the minutes too.
Okay.
Thank you. Ma'am? Is there anyone else who would like to speak this first time? If you put your hand up. There again, there's another section. Okay, thanks.
Hello, my name is Joyce Constantine, and I've just recently opened up a shop in downtown Newark. It's called the Gift Wrapping Shop, and it's actually right next door where the parking area lot is. It's the facing 4th Street. But I'm here tonight because of a parking issue. I did get a ticket for parking longer than 2 hours in the city of Newark. And I find that rather difficult to accept because it's not very helpful to businesses that are trying to conduct business and draw customers if you're giving people a ticket if they're in the city longer than 2 hours. Because it was explained to me that if you park in one spot and then you leave and you park in another spot, if you're still in the city of Newark within the 2 hour period, you can get a ticket. And I find that rather difficult to understand, because how can businesses, it seems to create a problem for businesses like mine when you're trying to get started and you're trying to get customers, to have people running around giving tickets to potential customers. So that's why I came here to try to find out what purpose this serves to give a ticket to somebody that's in the city of Newark longer than 2 hours, because they might want to visit more than one shop. And I think it's a hindrance to people who are trying to build their business. So that's why I'm here tonight.
All right, thank you. My understanding of this is there are certainly 11-hour parking places around on a little more of the outskirts, but the reason for the 2-hour parking was to keep someone that works downtown or is in a business downtown from parking right in front of your business for all day long where customers could not park. That's why they did the 2-hour parking, so those areas were basically for customers that could come and go to your business and probably would not be there longer than 2 hours was the thought of that to begin with. I know Director Baum could probably tell you, the gentleman back there in Sport Coat could probably tell you if I'm mistaken, but that was the whole concept of the park.
Oh, and then sometimes, even if somebody does have a business and they want to park in front of their business, there are certain reasons why they might want to park in front of their business. But yet, from what I understand, there are very limited places where people can park, from what I've been told. So that's kind of an issue.
All right, thank you. I'm sure Director Baum could tell you about the garage and a couple places that you can park. He's the gentleman back there standing at the door.
Okay, it's just that sometimes you like to have your car where you can
Sure.
see it.
Yes. All right, thank you. Okay, again, there's another section for citizens' comments after the legislation. Next, we'll move on to ordinances on the second reading, 19-08.
Ordinance 19-08 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Lang, an ordinance amending Chapter 618 of the codified ordinances of the City of Newark, Ohio regarding the causing serious physical harm to companion animals.
You've heard the second reading of 19-08. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Labutus.
I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 19-08.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Labutus.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rath. Is there any discussion on 19-08? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
19-08 passes 10-0. Next, we move on to resolutions on the second reading, 19-27.
Resolution 19-27 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Labutus, Mr. Frazier, and Mr. Lang. A resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio to negotiate and enter into contract subject to the appropriation of funds for professional engineering services in connection with the design and construction of an ultraviolet disinfection system upgrade project pursuant to Article 10.02D of the Charter of the City of Newark. This contract for professional services does not require competitive bidding.
You've heard the second reading of 19-27. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 19-27.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-27? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
19-27 passes 10-0. Next, we move on to 19-28.
Resolution 19-28 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang, Mr. Frazier, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio to advertise for bids and enter into contracts subject to the appropriation of funds for equipment installation for SCADA system upgrade at water treatment plant.
You've heard the second reading of 19-28. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 19-28.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-28? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
19-28 passes 10-0. And finally, we have 19-29 on the second reading.
Resolution 19-29 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Labutus, Mr. Rath, Mr. Lang, Mr. Frazier, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 19-29. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 19-29.
Motion by Mr. Marmee,
Second.
second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-29? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmee,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Cost,
Yes.
and Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
19-29 passes 10-0. Next, resolutions on the first reading. We have four this evening. First one is 19-31.
Resolution 19-31 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Frazier, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit applications to the Ohio Governor's Office of Criminal Justice Services for fiscal year 2019 Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant funding.
19-31 will be held for 2 weeks to our May 20th meeting. Next, we have 19-32.
Resolution 19-32 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Lang, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to apply for financial support from the State of Ohio 2019 Nature Works Grant.
19-32 will be held for 2 weeks, so May 20th to our next meeting. Next, we have 19-33.
Resolution 19-33 by Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Lang, a resolution amending the manner of distribution and use of emergency medical transportation or transport revenue.
19-33 will be held for 2 weeks to our next meeting. And finally, on the first reading, we have 19-34.
Resolution 19-34 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, Mr. Frazier, and Mr. Lang, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
19-34.
Mr. President.
Mr. Marmee.
I make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on Resolution 19-34.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have some things that we need to get projects rolling, so we have to expedite this to get the funds in there so then we can move forward with those.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. I'll please call the roll, waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt Resolution 19-34.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-34? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll vote.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
And Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
19-34 passes 10-0. And that concludes our legislation tonight. Thank you. Next, we have our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Again, this is not a debate with council. This is just your opportunity to be heard. If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll bring you up. We'll let everybody else go first since you already spoke once. Daniel? Anyone else besides these two? 3. Mr. Cross.
Daniel Crawford, 163 South 2nd Street. Most of everyone here knows how eventful the past month of my life has been. I would just start with, April 10th was a day of a candidate forum, and my grandmother happened to pass away that day. And, I had to fight with myself a little bit just to make myself leave my grandfather and my siblings at the hospital and go to the forum. But I felt like it was imperative that I at least still speak on the issues that I care about because that's what they would expect of me. Then, on my birthday, April 15th, the night of the last council meeting, we actually buried my grandmother that day. And sort of like icing on top of the cake, I kind of expected it because we were waiting on family to come from Missouri. And, but that was all well and good, and I'd at least gave me an opportunity to see family, so that was good in that part. Then my mother's birthday, what would have been her 56th birthday, was Easter Sunday, and tomorrow is actually the 7-year anniversary of her passing. So it's a little bittersweet there, but something else happened on April 15th. My car broke down, and it just made April 15th, 2019, one of the worst days of my life, honestly. But it reminded me how important transportation is. Because on top of worrying about getting to my grandmother's funeral and be able to get back to Newark because it was in Zanesville, I had to worry about how I'm going to get back and forth to work in general. And I ended up having to spend over $3,000 to get my car fixed. And actually earlier today I had to spend about another $300 on it again. And this serves as a reminder, like I said, about the importance of transportation for us. And I had an interesting conversation with someone at work. It was a customer. And this person we were talking, I can't remember how the conversation started, but we got onto the topic of seeing people on the streets with signs, and they said, the thing they always think to themselves is, why don't they just go out and get a job? And then then they brought up, how you have all these Amazon signs saying hiring for $18.50 an hour, and it's like, oh, that's great, this is a living wage job. But I mentioned to this person that for these people, a lot of these people, it's a matter of transportation. Amazon, their location is not exactly here in Newark, but a lot of people would rather go out to work a job like that if they could. And this person's response, well, no, the real issue is these people are worthless and they've always been worthless. And, I think to myself how extremely unfortunate that mindset is. And this is something that it's unfortunately spreading in a lot of ways. We see it on social media a lot, how it's almost like if you're homeless or if you're in need in any way, you're a parasite of some sort. And then you hear about other comments, whether it's from private citizens or public officials, about how people are coming in, invading Newark, and sort of exploiting us for our vast resources of some sort. And it's laughable to me because I mentioned before I've been homeless. And I've been homeless as a citizen of Newark before. And I'm just learning now, but apparently the Budget Inn is no longer available. And I mentioned in the past that the Budget Inn was where my family and I stayed when I was a teenager for that whole month that we were homeless then. So if we weren't able to go to the Budget Inn for $40 a night, we would have been in a bad position. We would have been on the streets, literally. So yes, there is a serious lack of affordable housing, serious lack of emphasis on living wage jobs and public transportation, but there's also this deficit of compassion. So part of the problem is when we start to ask ourselves, why are these people here? Where are they coming from? I don't care about where they're coming from or why they're here. I care about the fact that they're here now and they need help. And what it comes down to is especially if someone has children or even if they have pets, stop asking them where they're coming from. Just ask them, what can we do for you? And in turn, if we offer services to them, maybe they'll be willing to stay here and be a contributing member of our society. You give most people a chance and they're going to take it, run with it, and then build a better life from it. And then, of course, they're going to give back tenfold to that society that actually showed compassion. And I say this knowing that I'm a candidate for office and some things I say are going to be disagreed with by a lot of people. I don't particularly care if it costs me the election, because regardless of whether I get elected, I'm still going to be here championing these causes because I've experienced this in the past. So, yes, I'm a strong advocate for a tent city in the city of Newark. Is it a cure-all, like a recent guest column in the paper has suggested? No. I don't think it's going to cure everything, but it's a step in the right direction. It gives people a safe place to have a tent where they don't have to worry about it being bulldozed or their belongings being thrown out. It's just a temporary place. We need to give people something to hope for. And whether I'm elected or not, that's something I want to continue to fight for. And that's what I expect as a citizen of this city to see from our city. Whether it's a coalition of organizations in the area working together to help people out, or if it's our city spearheading that effort, we just need to do something. Because what we're doing now, what we've been doing, relying on things like the Newark Homeless Outreach or the Salvation Army, it's not working. And at the end of the day, we need to not try to push people out of the city, think about setting up something outside of the city limits. We need to think about what we can do for people who are here, because if they're here, they are part of Newark. And that's the way I've been raised. Like, if you were in our household, you were effectively a member of the family, because we took it as our responsibility. And that's what I see a community as, is a big family. So, with that, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm sorry about your last month. Sir?
Dwayne Anderson, 914B Empire Drive, Newark, Ohio. If you guys recall, about this time last year, I asked for a copy of the budget for 17. Upon receiving that budget, I found out that we had $1,600,000 that wasn't accounted for at all from the medics' runs. In 18, we had $1,600,000 that was taken in. That money there could be used for the safety director's police cruisers and the medical unit. It could pay it, but all them off. Another thing, Mr. Mayor, Service Director Rhodes, and Councilman, the downtown area looks beautiful. I walk around it at least once a day, and it's something to be very proud of. You guys have done a good job.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Linda Mossholder, 224 Green Meadow Drive, Newark, Ohio. I neglected to thank some of the council members who have stopped by the homeless outreach. Mr. Blake, Mr. Ellington, Mr. Lang, and Mr. Frazier, who had a kind of a unique experience when he was there. He not only got to mingle with the homeless or the unsheltered, he also got to make a trip to the Licking County Dog Shelter. We actually had what appeared to be a homeless dog who appeared to be neglected. So I just wanted to thank people who have stopped by, because I think it helps when you put a face to a number. So I neglected to do that, so thank you.
Thank you. Any city administration officials? Mr. Motter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to give a brief report on all the wonderful things that took place in our city this past Friday and Saturday. The city was alive and well with people doing a lot of different and varied activities that were offered over Friday and Saturday. If I could just share briefly with you what took place here, because they're all things that brought people into the city of Newark from around the surrounding areas, and it directly impacted the economic development of the businesses here in the city of Newark. So here's just a sampling. The Newark Area Soccer Association hosted their annual Buckeye Cup soccer tournament. There were 125 teams were registered to participate. There was a cruise-in classic car show held at the Newark Downtown Library at 6 p.m. this past Friday. The Chamber of Commerce sponsored a Cinco de Mayo pub crawl on Friday evening. It was amazing. You couldn't miss the people who were participating. They all had their brightly colored Cinco de Mayo T-shirts on, and it was really fun to watch everybody going around from business to business. 31 West hosted several shows over the weekend. One was called the Quasi Kings with Hope Dealers. Canal Market celebrated the opening of Farmers Market this past Friday, so that'll continue on the Tuesdays and Fridays throughout all the way through October. Licking County Players hosted a production that started this past weekend. Midland played host to a very popular group. I think all of you probably have heard of Three Dog Night. They were here in town at the Midland Theater. Also on the square on South Park Place, the Felded Flower Workshop was taking place on Saturday from noon to 12, or from 9 to 12:30. And a few other items on the East End. The Department of Development teamed up with the Property Maintenance Department and did another neighborhood cleanup for the east side. We sent out over 800 mailings to property owners to make sure that they were aware of what was taking place for this cleanup day. And it was very well received. We had a tremendous showing of people who brought a lot of items that are now no longer issues that property maintenance will have to now deal with. But in addition to sending the mailings out to the property owners, the Property Maintenance Department also did what they called a blitz. They canvassed those neighborhoods where the cleanup day was participating and they would give people notices that, hey, there are some violations, but hey, we have also a solution for you. And that's part of what we need to do with our community development block grant dollars. They come from HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we are there to make a difference with these dollars, to be a hand up and not a handout. So we did put those dollars to good use also this past Saturday. That was held from 8 till noon. And two other things, the Canal Market had a home and garden show under the Canal Market District Pavilions. Lowe's was their sponsor. I had a chance to talk with the Lowe's store manager and a couple of other department managers. They brought over $40,000 worth of product to this home and garden show. There was patio furniture, there was lawn and garden equipment, there was plantings. They also had about 10 to 12 employees that they paid to come and make sure that they were able to answer questions from citizens who came down. I saw Councilman Cost was there. Sorry if I missed anybody else, but he was there as well to visit and speak with the Lowe's representatives. And last but not least, the American Heart Association sponsored their 4th annual Heart Chase event, which promotes healthiness. I'm getting close. Yeah, that is. It's a long day. But anyways, it was an exciting place to be in the city of Newark. And I just want to make sure everybody knew we're off to a good start for the spring and summer months. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. All thanks.
Mayor Hall.
Thank you, President. Three things. Dwayne mentioned about $1.6 million. That's EMS revenue. I think we know there's a piece of legislation going through now. That's gross, of course. There's net refunds out of that. And then it divvies up. But to answer your question, it is paying for the debt service on the medic units. So that is one, at least. That's one direction that money goes. Linda, thanks for your detailed report on housing and the update. She mentioned about the task force. Of course, it's meeting regularly. And she mentioned about an RFP. They've got to the point to hire a consultant. I will keep you updated on that as we move forward on that. And finally, while we celebrate several things, our Newark Generals ice hockey team won the state championship again. It's 2 years in a row. They have visited us before, but at this time, I visited them a week ago Sunday out at their final year-end festivities and banquet, I guess you'd call it, because it was outdoors, and presented them with a proclamation. And it's so you know the youth league, the very young, are going to have a waiting list only. So they're proud and healthy and be moving forward. And they also placed in the top 4 in the nation. Those finals were in Mentor, Ohio, I think it was. So they have something good to celebrate. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Mr. Frazier.
Mr. President, Linda, thank you for coming and sharing your information. My dog, my wife is a dog lover, and as soon as that dog showed up, I knew that I was taking it, and there was no way for me to get out of it. There is some concern that I have with the dog being placed back with the owner that let it run loose, and it was in bad shape. So I am trying to follow up with that with the humane agents as well as with the city to try to see where that lands and to try to take care of that dog and see what happens to it. Great turnout for the Canal Market and the Buckeye Cup. I want to thank the Parks Department for the HHCA cleanup. They did donate a truck, take away the trash and the garbage, and I'm really looking forward to working with the Economic Development Department next year as well in order to coordinate that with their efforts to try to align on a date and do everything that we can to try to clean up those neighborhoods. I also want to thank the volunteers with the U.S. Army for coming out to North Street Park to build a retaining wall this weekend in the rain, and we added about 20 feet of wall to try to bring the park back to life before we get new equipment that was damaged in a storm. Daniel, I'm sorry for your family loss in the last month that you've had. And one of the things that came out of the Newark Homeless Outreach was I was able to give Bibles out to the Haven. And so when you put yourself out there and you have a compassionate heart, a lot of opportunity comes with that. And so I'm not going to discourage you from ever not following your heart and following your passion and make sure that you put yourself out there. The other thing is with Garrett Ford, I don't think I've ever been prouder of an athlete in Licking County, and it's very inspiring for what he does and what he has shown himself to be capable of. I was proud of him in the States, and to go to the Nationals in the world is just phenomenal. And with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Hall?
Yes, thank you. Daniel, I wanted to say how sorry I am about your loss, and thank you for your comments. Linda, thank you for your details. That's a very detailed report. I really appreciated that. And if I could get a phone number from you after council, that would be great. And Mark, thank you for the updates. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Levitas?
Mr. President, I just wanted to thank the mayor and everyone that participated last Thursday, I believe, in the National Day of Prayer event on the front steps of the City Hall. Quite a few people showed up, and thank the kids from Blessed Sacrament and St. Francis for being there as well to sing a few songs as well. And just a reminder for everyone to vote tomorrow. After that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Levitas. Mr. Lyon?
Yeah, Linda, it was great to hear from you. The inventory that you gave of all the different services I thought was really useful, and I'd actually like to follow up to see if you can email me that list. I can certainly watch the video again, but it'd be handy just to have that. It's really, and generally thank you for all you do in the community. I know you're very involved with a lot of these groups, so thank you for coming. Daniel, I think I told you this the night of the forum, but I thought you showing up there after all you had gone through that day really showed a lot of your character, and I have a lot of admiration for your dedication. So even though we don't agree on a lot, I do admire your dedication to fighting for what you believe in. And then last, I'd just like to remind everybody that tomorrow is the primary election day. We've got judges on the ballot on both sides of the aisle, and we've got primary for some of our at-large seats. It's an important time to get out and vote, especially in a primary where voter turnout's not expected to be high. So your voice counts a little bit more in these primaries. So really like to encourage everybody to get out and vote. With that, I'll pass.
Mr. Lyon, Mr. Marmon?
Thank you, Mr. President. Need to call a Finance Committee meeting for the 20th of the month. I just want to thank everybody who has participated in this evening's meeting, whether it be the information that you shared or else a concern that you have. I wish Ms. Constantine was still here because as far as the parking issues, what was happening is that employees of the downtown area were taking up and parking in front of the businesses, and that was what we were trying to deter, is for them to have parking places, and actually they have to walk a little bit further. And when we did have the rule of the 2 hours and you could move, literally employees would go move their cars every 2 hours, and then they'd be parking in front of businesses, and then no one had access to the businesses. So that was the main premise behind the whole thing, of making sure that the immediate downtown area where there are businesses, it was limited to the 2 hours for customers to be able to come in and out. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon. Mr. Rath?
Thank you. I too want to express my condolences to you, Daniel, for your loss. I feel for your challenges with your transportation and vehicles and stuff like that. I know I've certainly been in those positions before. I'll tell you that through every obstacle that he sends you, you come out stronger at the other end. So keep that in mind. Linda, I want to thank you for coming as well and giving us that information. Certainly appreciate the input, and I will encourage everybody to do their simplest and most valuable civic duty tomorrow. And please, if you haven't already, go vote. I'll call a service committee meeting, and with that, I'll pass.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Blake?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to give my thanks to Director Motter. I think your department coordinating with the South Newark Civic Association. We had a very good. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend. I had a hurt foot that day, but I do understand it was very successful. So thank you for coordinating with that, and of course you did the East End and any other coordination with groups like that. I think is a very positive thing. So thank you for your work there. Daniel, I just, it's just sort of a roller coaster which you went through of emotions, and just know that there's always people who care for you, and you're always a regular here in council chambers, and we know that regardless of what happens, you're going to be here as an advocate and a fighter. So thank you for that. And unexpected expenses always occur, and especially one of $3,000. So I could feel, I just had a water heater break, so there went $1,400, $1,200, $1,400 for me. So it's just like, sheesh, when these unexpected things happen, it's like, what do you do? But most definitely prayers go to you as always. I want to thank Linda for her information, but I know Linda well, so that type of detailed information is common from Linda Moss-Holder, because she does her research, she does her due diligence in trying to figure out where exactly resources are, and you get true facts and true information from her. So thank you for reporting that tonight, Linda. I appreciate that. Earlier today, we had at Kiwanis luncheon, we had Scott Hayes talking about the jail ministry and the efforts, the ministry, the true ministry, because this work really is, you're doing God's work. I really believe that. Trying to help the needy, help the people that are less fortunate. And I just want to remind council, because I'm sure others probably already know this, but May 18th at 1 o'clock at the Canal Market District, there's going to be a fundraiser for the Vertical 196, which is underneath the umbrella of the jail ministry. And so I'd encourage as many people to attend that function as possible. And then also on May 18th, that later on that night, is the police ball. So earlier the mayor gave a resolution to recognize the Blue Line Week, but to recognize our police officers at the Beasley Lounge. That'll also be on the May 18th that evening. And I think that's all, and I'll yield. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Bubb?
I will pass, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bubb. Mr. Goss?
Linda, thank you so much. I'm speaking for myself. I would like to have a copy of that roster that you read, and I'm sure others would as well. You mentioned the Licking County Housing Initiative having a monthly meeting.
They usually meet every other month, but given the...
Sorry?
Sorry.
I just need to know when it is.
Okay, I will email you the dates.
I'd also like to give a special thanks to the 400 Newark High students, faculty, staff, coaches that all participated in the Community Cleanup Day last Thursday on May 2nd. They helped out in the parks. They picked up trash. They put down mulch in the parks and in the bike path. That's incredible. What a neat thing to do for the city. I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. Mr. Fennell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Linda, as a librarian, I appreciate all of your extensive research. It's very impressive. And for providing everything you do in our community. I see you pretty much everywhere in the community. So I appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge with us. It's difficult sometimes to have a real idea of what's happening. We know that all of these organizations exist, but we don't know the details about them. So bringing that forward, I think, is really helpful to put that in perspective for us. So thank you for coming, for everything that you do in our community. Daniel, I think everybody up here knows how hard an election is, and to have everything on top of it, your perseverance and your dedication is admirable, and I really appreciate you coming, still making the time to show up and to be there and to advocate for people, even when you're hurting. I think that shows a great strength of character, and I appreciate that. I would also like to say that thank you for all the reports that are happening this week in Mr. Motter. I was down here on Friday. I usually am working, and I was off that day. I went down to the farmer's market, and it was incredible to see how many people were out and about in downtown Newark that day. It really felt like an incredible, vibrant place to be, and I was very excited to be there. So I think Newark has a really bright future, and that was a beautiful example of that. If you haven't voted already, although I'm sure everybody has already early voted, please make sure that you get out and and vote in the primaries again. So with that, I will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Fennell. Again, I'd like to have my thanks to everybody this evening. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your opinions. Then if you do have that in email form, if you get it to me or Autumn, we'll make sure everybody gets it, and anybody that's interested in it. Also, our next committee meeting would be May 20th in this room at 5:45. Our next full council is at 7 o'clock that same evening. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Kloss, second by Mr. Booth. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Same time. We're adjourned.